United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we sit, before we have our moment of silence, today I received news, information concerning two of our Rappahannock family, Dr. Bob Chappell and Mr. Jack Raines, if you have known either one of them. Both diagnosed with cancer, severe. I encourage you to write them, to visit them, if you can, to remember them in your prayers, thoughts. Let's pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Welcome to our monthly meeting. We are here to accomplish the business of school for the sake of our students. We do, we do want to hear from our citizens, and there is a time for public comment prior to our action items on the agenda. We ask that speakers identify themselves and their home district. We also ask that your comments are limited to 3 minutes in order to provide equity to all speakers and to ensure our meeting is reasonable in length. If you have more information than can be summarized in 3 minutes, please provide leave-behind materials for the board's review. The moderator will ask you to conclude your remarks as the time has elapsed. If you have additional questions during the session, you may ask for clarification from your school board member or a school rep administrator after the meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
We have a motion, Mr. Grove. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Bonham. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. And so ordered. Report from our student liaison.
So, I guess we get started.
Turn the
So,
mic on.
on Wednesday, sorry.
Is it even on?
I think
It's
it's
got
on.
a switch.
Oh yeah, there you go. Okay.
Hey, could you introduce yourself to the world?
Yeah, so I'm Skylar Culbertson, and I'll be the new student representative.
Thank you, Skylar.
So on Wednesday, February 6th, we had the fun run, and several high school students helped during 3rd and 4th block during that. For winter sports, they're almost finished, and we have spring sports beginning within the next 2 weeks. So 6 wrestlers are actually going to states on Friday, February 15th, and that will be held at the Salem Civic Center. And then for basketball, we have the boys varsity region tournament at Cumberland High School on February 18th, and for the girls here at RAP, that'll be versus Central on February 19th. And then the NHS tutoring for elementary schoolers, that has actually ended because so many students were participating in sports, so we didn't have enough people. And then for band, the strawberry sale will be from February 4th through the 19th. Mini golf, February 16th. Seniors, they'll be selling flowers this week for Valentine's Day, this Thursday. And then the peer mentoring program, peer mentors will be also giving their mentees little letters with flowers on Valentine's Day. And then the overnight trip at Massanutten, that will be held February 22nd through the 23rd. So we have a musical, Chicago, and practices will be every week. The backpacks program will continue every Tuesday during Flex. Prom preparations. Prom is actually early this year. It's March 23rd. So we're currently working on decorations and invitations. So those should be out like within the next 2 weeks. Leo Club this Thursday for Valentine's Day will be going to the Senior Center. And we're going to make little cards with them and give them a few goodies. And then some Leo Club members will be helping out with the band concert this Sunday, the 17th in Little Washington. And then this Thursday for Valentine's Day, we have a Pride Variety Show. Ms. Pond's been working on that, and that will be held during Flex. Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions?
Very good.
Good job, Skylar. Have a great evening. Study hard. I'm the next thing on the agenda is where we recognize ourselves and what a great job we're doing. This is our humility. Now, for some reason, every year in February, they recognize us with a piece of paper that says our name on them, and an attaboy girl. Attaboy girl. So I guess I'll hand this over to the Madam Clerk.
You're actually doing it? Well, of course. Of
It is. It
course.
says-
We do
actually,
appreciate our school board.
There are
very
850
much.
school board members in the state of Virginia, and they're going to be appreciated this month.
So I'm going to present to each of you a certificate from VSBA, a certificate of recognition. Each of you.
Now, the thing that's really cool is this. So
Yeah.
this is really cool. Well,
Oh, this is really cool, too.
this is
Yeah,
really
this
cool.
is
Yeah,
cool.
this is really cool.
From the students of the high
Students,
school.
Very
nice.
And you know, we got rebranded this year, so this is our rebranding. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Very cool.
And these are made by the kids.
So it's neat. You know, when we do go somewhere and we represent our school, it's good for them to see this.
And Mr. Chairman, also it is School Board Clerk, Deputy Clerk Appreciation Week. So we also have a certificate for Ms. Rogers for being an excellent, outstanding school board clerk.
Good job.
Yeah.
And then we have cake.
And we have cake. Recess. I guess we'll eat that at the end of the meeting, as we come to conclusion. All right, thanks. Donations.
Okay, I have a long list of donations. So what I'm going to do, a lot of them are for the after-prom party. So I'm just going to read the name and what they donated. So the following donations are for the after-prom party. Lorraine Caverns donated gift certificates totaling $56. Lorraine Copy Service donated Post-its, notepads, and a coffee mug. The Alamo donated gift certificates totaling $66. The Rappahannock County Lions Club donated $550. MJ Farrell Group donated $50. Sue and Michael Luthi donated $25. Union Bank and Trust donated $100. The Sign Doctor Sales donated $25. Linda Clark donated $25. Robert Darby donated $500. Harris Hollow Foods donated $200. Country Chevrolet donated $500. Thomas Breeden donated $100. Thomas Wolf Builder donated $25. Barbara and Matthew Black donated $50. Spadino Sellers donated $50. And then I have 3 other donations. Blue Ridge Forestry Consulting donated $100 for the wrestling and equipment at the high school. And Philip and Penny Cardis donated $2,871.58 for student lunch accounts that are in need. And then we had an anonymous donor donating $10,000 for the shade structure at the elementary school.
That was a matching donation, wasn't it? For the fun run, that $10,000.
Yes.
The PTO sponsored and met their $10,000 goal. So that was amazing because
Great.
the first year of this new fundraiser at PTO, they raised $10,000 and a donor matched that,
Great.
which is a big,
Huge.
big thing for PTO. It's a huge thing. People worked hard, it was
Great.
really
So we
fun.
got a lot of donations.
It's a great
Yeah.
list, and they will receive a letter of thanks
Yes.
if we're willing to accept their donation. What's the chances?
Well, with some.
Great list and great community.
Absolutely.
It is amazing.
You might want to recognize the fact that Bob Darby moved to Florida 4 years ago, and he's constantly providing.
So he must regret that
Moving
dramatically.
to Florida?
Yeah, because,
I don't know.
you don't know about that?
But he loves Rappahannock to that point. He
Wow.
also does I think a $2,000 scholarship.
At the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yes, she does.
All right, thank you. Moving on, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from January 8th and January 15th work session meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion, Mr. Groves, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Meyer. Is there any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. And so did you have a chance to review the bills?
I did.
This past month?
I want to commend the new format. There's a new format on the website that basically indicates where all the money has gone into which vendors they have gone to. So it's a very, oh, there it is, right there. It's a very comprehensive list, so everybody knows what's being spent and where it's being spent. I have at least one question, attorney's fees. I didn't realize we had attorney's fees this past month. I knew we had those months before.
So attorney's fees, we, remember last year's budget, we cut down a great deal by like $20,000. We're trying to do everything right, planning on not being sued. But once in a while, you will have consultation that you need an opinion letter on or something like that. That's of a sensitive nature or controversial or what have you. So this past time, we had a few FOIA requests that were challenged. Blue Ridge Independent had a few questions, and we released what information we could, but when they challenged that, which they can do, that's within any citizen's rights to do that, we need to make sure we prepare an opinion piece, and that's what we have our school board attorney do, just to verify that we're compliant. So that's what occurs. So
That was Blue Ridge Independent?
Yes, this past time was, right. So when we have those, that does come back with an opinion letter, we put that in documentation, and that all follows through. So it costs a little bit to do that. Our attorney is pretty expensive, but we use them, we do have a budget line to protect the board with those kind of things, so we want to make sure we use those.
And that number was $5,547.50 for this?
3,000 something, I believe.
$3,025 for this time. But then what are these? I'm seeing a $5,547 number on
That
my
might be the
spreadsheet.
total.
I think that's the total
The
altogether.
total
All
altogether
year,
for the
for
year?
all
year,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
There were some other consultations we had to do with enrollment and a few other things that we had to ask him on.
I see.
He does meet with us once a year and gives us a chance to ask him stuff for free. That's pretty cool.
So we'll have a list
And
this
Shannon takes full advantage of that.
Yes, I do.
I was sitting at lunch and she was like, boom, 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 boom. Attorney, I'm like, well.
I'll take it.
Well, he's very, he's very, very good.
Yeah, he is.
And he knows school law, which is a really unique section
I
of
do,
law.
and when we show up at the conference, he and the lady that was with us, can't remember her name, but they teach there.
Mhm.
So,
And they conduct one of the annual FOIA trainings that we send our FOIA officers to as well. So it's not, I don't think it's law just yet, but that's becoming required for state agencies and for schools. We just do that, that's best practice to make sure our FOIA officers are trained because the law is always changing and the exemptions may change and you just have to stay well versed on those.
So it was a FOIA
Challenge.
that was challenged because
Correct.
they didn't think you gave enough information, is that it?
wanted more.
Or wanted more?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a challenge on our interpretation of the exemption or whatever, so when that happens, that's their right to do that. We just make sure we get that opinion from the attorney to be sure this is what we did, here's everything that was withheld, they review everything and then come up with an opinion whether or not we were compliant.
And then the money that they pay, because you have to pay for that.
Mhm.
Where does that doesn't go back to the attorney fees, it goes
No.
back to,
Per policy, we charge a certain amount of fee based on mostly staff time that it takes to retrieve documents from the
Copying.
server and put together the packets. Sometimes they're very large. This last one, I think, was 400 and something pages long that had to be combed through to make sure we weren't violating anything about FERPA or HIPAA or any of the other federal laws that you can't, cross into. So that's how that works.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, then, moving on to the approval of the consent, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, which contains the donations, approval of donations, payment of the bills, the attendance report, the homeschool report, and the 4-H bus usage? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
We have a motion, Ms. Bynum, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Grove, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. So ordered. Dr. Grinsley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My first item is a textbook adoption update, and to do that, I'm going to ask this year's teacher leader, English teacher Julie Ruth, to the podium to explain the process. She applied and received the teacher leader position of leading the textbook adoption and some realignment in the 6th through 12th grade English curriculum. So I'm going to let her take the floor and make sure I can find the presentation here.
Hi, I'm Julie Ruth, and I teach 7th grade English. I'll be brief. Last year they had a K-6 reading adoption, and so this year we went with the 7-12, and so just giving you a quick progress update. First off, around October, we started gathering information from the middle and high school teachers. Department meetings, I had a little survey that went out, asking the high school English teachers what they were teaching, what they needed, things like that. And then what we discovered is that the English department overwhelmingly wanted a textbook for reference. We have not had a textbook in a long time, and so there were a couple. We needed to supplement our novels. We wanted more short stories, poetry, and nonfiction. Nonfiction is a big thing we're trying to emphasize. Also, we needed more materials for grammar and writing that worked seamlessly from one grade to the next. We wanted to know that a 7th grade narrative looked different than a 10th grade narrative, and in what ways. And so we felt like a textbook would really help us with that. So we were looking for authentic, diverse literature with various lexile levels for differentiation, with the low and the high groups, the struggling readers and the high achievers. We wanted online components because we do have Chromebooks and we want to use them, and all of the new textbooks have that, and we didn't know, obviously there should be future opportunities outside the classroom also for these online programs. We wanted to definitely, one of the big things was that we wanted to support our English language learner population. It is growing, and the teachers want the tools to really be able to help support them the best way we can. And finally, this may just be an English teacher thing, but we really liked units instead of just by genre, like, oh, here's your poetry unit. That's not how the kids are tested at the end of the year anyway, and so we wanted to work on thematic units to where we could get into bigger pictures like friendship or, identity or whatever, and community and things like that. And so fortunately, all of them do that, and so that was a big push. It's kind of new too in English to teach that way. So I talked to other teachers in Virginia. Facebook has a page for the Virginia Association for Teachers of English that I belong to, and so I got online and took some surveys. There's also a really interesting Ed Week article called Highly Rated Curricula Are Not the Norm in More Than a Third of Large District Studies. So I wanted to see, they ranked textbooks, and so I got in there and double checked which textbooks they liked versus what was on the VDOE website, and just started really looking around to make sure we were getting quality things, materials. And so these are our 3 programs that we liked. Houghton Mifflin, Pearson, and EMC all have very good quality textbooks that we're looking at. We got samples from them. Yeah. So got on the phone a lot in October, in November, December, the sample materials arrived. In December and January, we've had textbook reps coming in. The English department at the high school have been very patient with me because I'd let them know at the last minute, we're having a meeting, could you please show up? They've been very good about that. And so just last week, we even had another lady come visit from EMC, which is important because as a small school district, I think we kind of get ignored sometimes. I've had a couple of them just never even write me back, I think, when they saw how small we were. And EMC is definitely, all 3 of these are definitely invested in small districts, so that was nice to hear. Finally, at the end of February, I told the 3 companies that I need quotes, and in March, there's going to be, during parent-teacher conferences, I'll have them all set up, probably at the high school, and then I can do it down at the elementary school with the 7th graders, the upcoming 6th grade parents, that kind of thing. And so finally, I'm not really sure in March, I think once we get all the quotes in and everything, you'll let us know how it's shaking out. And we like all of them, but we'll work with Dr. Grimsley to make a final decision. And so, yeah.
excellent work. And I will say that timeline's important to the budget planning process. If you remember in our current budget right now, we had 59,000 supporting the K-5 reading adoption. So now we're moving along to the next phase of that, which is your 7 to 12. Typically, the high school, those grade levels won't cost you nearly as much. So I think with the money we have there, we will be well within the means to purchase any one of these, I would hope.
We're looking more at class sets. We didn't really think a
Yeah.
big hardcover textbook for every kid was necessary.
So chances are you'll see that line probably reduced quite a bit based on this quote, because that's the only adoption we're doing. And then also some consumable, replacements are regular schedule, but that number would come down just to support this adoption. So once we see the quotes, we negotiate a bit, then we can work with that. But yeah, those
Are
typically.
we going to open up any evenings for parents to come and look at those?
Mhm.
I know we've got parent review, parent-teacher conferences, but is there
Yes.
any other days for that?
We
or-
can, upon appointment, they can be seen, and also last year with the reading, we had several days throughout the term before adoption that they could also cast a vote. to
Right,
the
we did that with the elementary school.
Yes, we
I
did.
would hope we do it with the high school.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Mr. Swindler and I can work together to come up with a good time.
Mhm.
And we choose one of these three
Mhm.
after all this process.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
It's part of our policy that we follow a very, strict guidelines. These are all three on the state list or not?
Yes.
So that makes it
Oh,
even
they make
easier,
it-
so.
Yeah,
once-
I didn't go off list. I was happy with what I had on there.
That's good. Sometimes we have gone off list if it meets,
I think the
because-
elementary was off list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes your needs don't exactly fit what the state of Virginia thinks every school should have. So, we make a decision with the experts on the field and decide what's the best for us, as long as we follow that procurement process for textbook adoption and all the reviews are in place, so.
And they love the new program. That's an update from the elementary school. They're really happy. The K-6 teachers
Sure.
are doing, they love it.
Great.
Yeah. I know.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth.
Okay. The next item is the Madison agreement. This is the time of year, each year where we review that. No changes based on last year. The LCI numbers aren't recalculated at this point in time. So what the Madison agreement does is it allows us to be able to piggyback on Madison's LCI in order to get what they call a basic aid calculation. But it doesn't come in the form of your basic aid, it actually comes in supplemental basic aid. So as we noticed last time our LCI was adjusted, we hit this hidden cap of money that you receive on your basic aid, and we lost quite a bit of money, so there was a lot of behind-the-scenes work to figure out how that happened. So that's how it happens. There is a cap on that, but we're not in danger of hitting that at this point. So this agreement, we share services. So for instance, we share slots in our Latin classes and culinary. We send our visiting teacher to Madison to do some educational testing and things like that. So prior to putting any school buses up for auction, Madison gets an option to get there first. To say thanks, but no thanks.
Would you like our junk?
You need a check.
For parts? No.
So this is the documentation we need to have just to have on file in case the state asks for it to, and that's the document we provide to make sure we get our supplemental basic aid. So it's worked so far.
And we've been doing this for a lot of years.
Yes.
Trying to
And it benefits
increase our
everybody.
bottom line any way we could.
And that is an action item tonight to get that approved to send over to Mrs. Graham.
Any questions about the agreement?
Pretty clear.
The next item is a calendar update. So Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Carol Johnson will give you the update about how her and the calendar committee came to some interesting conclusions with this calendar.
Okay, we were a little bit later in putting the calendar proposal together this year. We were kind of sitting back waiting to see how much more pounding the weather was going to give us before this school year was over. But we finally bit the bullet and decided to move forward because there's no way to predict what's going to happen between now and the end of the year. So we came up with a proposal for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity to present that for your consideration. So the traditional calendar that we put together prior to last school year was a 187-day calendar that included 7 built-in days in case of inclement weather. We had an early start in that traditional calendar, which was usually somewhere around August the 10th. First semester ended with the winter break, which gave us the potential for the end of the school year ending anywhere between May the 14th to May the 22nd. The calendar featured a 9 to 10 day winter break, teacher work days at the start of the year, and another one at the beginning of the second semester, and then 3 to 4 professional development days. So last year we really took a good look at the state requirements from the Virginia Code. We looked at the 180-day option for putting a calendar together, or the 990 hours. The Virginia Code requires that you make up the first 5 days plus 1 day for each 2 days missed in excess of 5 days. However, you could look at the number of hours as part of your makeup time. The school day is required to be 5.5 hours, excluding meals and recess, and in RCPS, we have a 6.25-hour school day, which gave us the additional time to accrue banked hours. So this year's calendar team got together beginning of January. It consisted of teachers, administrators, we had input from parents and support staff, and getting guidance for what we wanted to do for the next school year. Overall, the consensus was a good one for the type calendar that we have for this school year. This is the first school year that we've had a calendar built on 180 days for quite a few years. Even though we had several days that we missed first semester, the staff overall still felt very positive with the calendar that we have in place for this school year. So we wanted to continue to end the first semester at the winter break, try to have a little bit later start date due to the heat since all of our school buses are not air conditioned, take a look at some half-day professional and work days. We wanted to try to continue with the full-day conferences. First semester this year got a little bit skewed because we ran into homecoming weekend, and so we kind of had to move the schedule around for our conferences. So we haven't really had the opportunity to try the full-day conference that had a teacher work day to prepare for the conferences before the conferences actually happened. It was a very strong consensus of the group that we look to put some kind of an additional holiday into the first semester to provide some kind of a break to re-energize our students and our staff. And then the out-of-the-box thinking for this year was to consider 2 short breaks in the spring versus a 1-week break to prevent having a long period of time for the students being out and then having to reacclimate back into the school setting after they were on that break. So the features of the calendars, there were 2 calendars that we proposed to the staff. Both of the calendars had 180 days of instruction, which was 87 first semester, 93 second semester. A later start date was proposed for the 3rd week of August. We did include a holiday in October. We continue with the full-day parent-teacher conferences each semester, added an additional half-day of professional development in the 2nd semester for a total of 4.5 days of professional development. The team also discussed the possibility of online training, some after-school options. We already have teachers who initiate their own professional development activities through forming a book club to examine a topic of interest, so continue to provide those opportunities for our staff. And then both calendars featured 3 early release days at the end of the school year. The staff felt this was important to help them to be able to get all of the students' final grades together for the last day of school to send home report cards. The major difference in the 2 calendars presented was the spring break. Calendar A had the traditional 1-week spring break proposed in April. Calendar B had 2 short breaks in the spring, a 3-day break in March and a 3-day break in April around the Easter holiday. So in the survey of the staff, that went out to our school staff February the 6th. It was kept open through February the 8th. We had 96 staff respond with a split 50-50 down the middle vote on that one. So we had quite a few positive comments about the out-of-the-box idea for the 2 shorter spring breaks, but you know, traditions are hard to break, so we didn't quite make it that way. So Dr. Grimsley came up with a great idea of let's open it up to the parents. So I had already posted on Facebook the option for parents to contact me if they had input that they wanted to give on the calendar. I think I had one parent who took advantage of that. But yesterday we did open it up to the parents for a vote. So they voted pretty well. We had 212 parents respond between yesterday and 3:30 this afternoon, with 46% voting for calendar A with the 1-week spring break and 54% voting for calendar B with the 2 shorter spring breaks. So that threw us over the top overall. So our recommendation would be for calendar B, as it did have the greater number of overall votes. We also believe that this calendar does make more sense instructionally with the 2 shorter breaks for students. It allows for makeup days to happen in March, and it also doesn't come as close up on the SOL test as what the April spring break did. So comments from survey participants, we had 2 comments referencing the placement of the conference days, maybe to reconsider a Thursday versus a Friday. 9 comments supporting the smaller breaks in the spring. 1 comment suggesting a set spring break in March that kind of keeps us away from the SOL testing in April. A comment supporting a week for the week-long spring break for vacation planning purposes. 1 comment to protect the days in the shorter spring breaks from makeup, and then 10 comments thanking the calendar committee. It's always nice to be appreciated. So I quickly scanned what other school divisions are looking at for next school year. Culpeper is continuing to have 5 days that they will add on to the school year, and then they would add time to the day. Warren County just went with the 187-day calendar. I think they've just given up and said we're just going to go with the 187. Arlington didn't have any makeup days addressed in their calendar, but I did note that they're starting after Labor Day and they're getting out in the middle of June. Prince William County, it looks like they're doing the same thing. They had a 181-day calendar. Fauquier had 1 to 4 days using their banked hours or their additional time in school. They had 2 additional days that they added into the calendar. They were going to use President's Day as a potential makeup day, and then they had 8 to 10 days out they were going to use bank time again. So theirs was a little bit more convoluted. Fairfax, they're the leader of Virginia. They're going to up to 20 days no makeup, and they get out of school about halfway through the middle of June. So it's kind of all over the place. So definitely there are more school systems that are still stuck in the after Labor Day start. If you'll think back to several years ago, Rappahannock was really the leader in starting back earlier in August. And if the school board accepts this calendar B proposal, we could be setting the trend with the new 3 spring break days. So we'll see. So, final thoughts, recommendation for calendar B. Again, it does acknowledge the expertise of our staff, that it's the quality of our instruction, not our quantity. At the end of the first semester, I did do some quick calculating because we missed 4 days first semester. So my question is, number one, did we meet all of our hours? We still exceeded the number of hours we needed to have for instruction. Number two, how did our high school students do on their SOLs? And they did very well. We had a hiccup in our history this year, but that was not based on instructional days. That was based on change in standards. So we did have quality instruction. Our second semester still has more days in it than the first semester. That's where you're going to miss your days for inclement weather, so that's a positive. We feel like the later start date will help increase student attendance at the start of the year. It still supports parents through extra conference time. We have a little bit of additional time for teacher professional development in there, and we still have a plan for makeup beyond 10 days. So that, in a nutshell, is the recommendation for calendar B. So now we're going to flip back to what's going on this year with the calendar because it's a few days out. Yeah, so we are making a request for an amendment to the calendar that we have in place for this school year. We do have that parent-teacher conference day that was scheduled for students to not attend on March the 22nd. And we would like to change that back now to a day where students do come to school. As of today, we have missed 10 days of school. 6 of them have been this semester. 2 of the 10 days we've missed this year were based on a declared state of emergency. So those were kind of, whether we needed them or not, that was kind of out of our control. So if we count those 2 that were a state of emergency in addition to the extra one that we want to put on March the 22nd, that gives us 3 more additional days to play around for inclement weather between now and the end of March, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but every little bit will help.
Put a lot of thought and work into this, more than most.
Thank you.
Any questions? Comments? Thanks for all that, Carol. It's a lot of work.
Well done.
Yes, like the calendar. The Exodus survey was, it counted up.
And
Always a good survey.
I like that.
basically
Always
still
a good survey.
so next year maybe we just flip a coin.
No, we need a survey.
No, use the survey. Good data.
All right.
I love those Facebook polls. It's a millennial in me.
Yeah.
We can tip this right in 2 days. Come on.
And it did say parents, I almost pushed on that thing, and I said, no, better not do that. I said they might have a way of finding out who it was.
I think they do.
We don't get that sneaky.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's too much work.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the budget update. This is a biggie, because this is the meeting where we determine the foundations on which, as soon as we're out of here tonight, Stacy and I will build a budget. So we want our marching orders and kind of build a consensus around what is going to be in this initial budget. So let me pull up my,
Are these documents in the back?
yes, they are. All the handouts that I'll talk about are in the back.
These documents that we're going to be reviewing are on those music stands in the back if you don't have one. Right? You good to grab them? If you want.
Pull this up this way. Hang on, I'm just going to pull it this way. There it is.
If you don't have enough, you'll be forced to share with your neighbor. We can get you one.
Or you can look up here.
Or you can look.
My head's not blocked.
Oh,
Or get your phone out and look at it.
Yeah, you could. Okay, so starting off, each year, we always want to take a good look at our vision and mission. And these are outlined in our, comprehensive plan, as well as our strategic objectives that we have, these division goals that we're all working towards. So content knowledge, career preparation, workplace skills, community engagement and civic responsibility, recruitment and retention, parent, family, and community involvement. So this is is sort of our conceptual framework on which we pretty much operate everything. Our evaluated goals are based on these. Each of us are evaluated on how well we're supporting our division goals. And then, of course, your budget is the biggest driving tool, I think, of how you're achieving your goals. So we work really hard to tie all that together. So our key considerations, I'll tell you, this one's a challenging budget. Everyone has been talking about the governor's budget, and very supportive, except, when you understand the nuances of what that means, it's a little more complicated than it looks like on the surface. So we'll talk about that. Enrollment and ADM trends, those are always on our mind because we have to do some longitudinal projections and things, and those trends are very important when you're projecting out what you anticipate your enrollment in ADMs to be. Retaining, recruiting talented
Say what
staff.
ADM is. for
ADM,
people.
average daily membership. Sorry. Retaining, recruiting talented staff, that's always a challenge, even more so for rural districts, I think, and the teaching requirements are getting more stringent and more challenging, and it's just very difficult to get a lot of young people to get into that profession anymore because the exchange on that and what you pay teachers is compared to what you have to pay to be a teacher versus what so it's a tough scale. So, but it is a work of heart and it's the best job in the world. So we love our teachers. Maintaining the integrity of our effective programs. We work really hard to provide our teachers with what they need to instruct our students. And when we have effective programs, we want to make sure we have all the tools built in to be able to support and keep those programs going. Capital improvement needs, we've made incredible gains in what we were able to do with our facilities. And I know on the surface, because we didn't do too much aesthetically just yet, but the bones and the inner workings of our systems, our HVAC, our water, our plumbing, cooling tower, all these big ticket items we were able to do because working alongside the county and being upfront with our challenges and needs and working out a way that we were able to do that. So this budget, you won't see an increase in our capital needs budget because we've been able to maintain what we were able to do and work alongside the county. We are going to continue to work with the county on some down the road projections, and Mr. Curry has a new process for that he is working on too, to try to get it all together. Big picture analysis of all the capital needs in the county. So
For the next
I'm excited.
5 years, 10 years.
5 years initially for planning, yes. And our CIP plan, our capital improvement plan is 5 years as well. So trying to align all of that together, working together, because remember, it's all the same pot of money, really. It's just where you're allocating it to be able to handle all this. So, and then new state mandates, which are coming at us faster than we can keep up sometimes, and many of them unfunded. So those are, most of them unfunded. So those are key considerations for how well we're able to be compliant with new mandates as well as maintaining our high performance. We are a high-performing school. We like to stay that way, but meeting all of these mandates are pretty difficult when you're smaller and we don't get nearly the amount of resources as a rural school district that you'll see in other places. So governor's budget, local composite index stays the same as last year's 0.7672. So what that means is 77% roughly of your budget has to come from the county. It's considered a local effort. So our schools are very well supported by our community, and we understand that, but that's what that means. So every funding formula that the state uses to give us our revenues for the upcoming budget, it'll make up the difference. So most of that comes from the county. The total difference that we're projecting in the governor's budget, if it's approved as he presented it, is actually up $76,000. So that is a good thing. Even after you consider that we lost our enrollment loss funding, we were hoping that the House and Senate committees would bring that back in. I didn't see it, but it's not as to say it won't make it toward the end when the governor can amend anything else and vote into law. So the good thing about the Senate and the House is they're both considering keeping the 5%. So I didn't see that drop at all. Last year, it was started as a 1, I believe, and it came up to a 3% increase in the biennium. So that was a last-minute change. So now it's up to the 5, and we'll talk more about that. Enrollment loss funding is really important. We're hoping that anyone who advocates really talks to their legislators about putting that back in, because that really affects rural districts across the state. We are part of a smaller rural district coalition to advocate for some of these issues on how the state formulas really are funneling a lot of the state funding away from rural districts who really need it, have at-risk students. So
How many districts are in your coalition?
we have 80.
80.
Oh, 80.
I said 76 yesterday, but it's 80.
We have 80 school districts that are affected, so that's half, more than half. Well, yeah, more than half of the districts in Virginia are affected this way. So when you consider that, when you have more of the urban areas that are that's where LCI usually doesn't get messed with, because it does provide so much aid to more urban areas. So yeah, we advocate where we can. Enrollment loss, at-risk funding, those are other formulas that can be used to funnel money into our local formulas for rural districts, but hasn't gotten too much momentum.
It seems like when I spoke with our delegate that he was like going across the hall to get it
Yeah.
put in there, and I'm so disappointed he hasn't.
He might have given it to whoever, here you go,
Yeah.
and then they said, yeah, okay.
And then they just, they just kept on
It
going.
happens more than you think.
It does,
So
it
I'm like,
does.
wow.
I will say, at-risk funding did get, put in there, so it looks like it will, but that's the way they played with the formula, that gives Rappahannock about $3,000. So that's not where we, wanted that to go. We were hoping the at-risk formula would include more of your Title I numbers and your socioeconomic needs and things like that.
And they did.
The formulas don't really do that right now, so we're trying. We can give you some talking points if anybody wants to advocate with your legislators, because they are important, and especially for a rural school district. This is why your enrollment and average daily membership trends were continuously going down. So that will be reflected in our FY20 budget. We are projecting an ADM of about 825. That could come in over, it could come in under. This year's kindergarten class was very low, so we already know our 855 projection for this year is going to be overshooting what we really had. So we're going to see that loss. So we're going to reduce our ADM projections and calculate our revenues based on that projection. So that number is what we'll put in. Position changes this year. We had the capability to play with a couple here, especially the high school assistant principal role. We had some changes in administration that happened over the summer, and we had this neat idea to try a pilot program, because we are guided with staffing by the standards of quality. Standards of quality usually give you a ratio by which you need to have a minimum staffing for whatever number. So high school assistant principal is usually a target when we talk SOQ, because we have such few numbers at our high school. When you have a principal, you really need a full-time high school assistant principal. And that comes up, has been for a couple years now. So we wanted to try something a little different. We started our Teacher Leaders Program, and what that does is build the leadership capacity from within. So teachers who have additional endorsements or an affinity for administrative roles or things like that, like our teacher leader that led the reading program adoption, they can dabble in different areas of need. We have a set number each year that we have in the budget to support those, but it saves quite a lot long-term, because you're not funding a full salary, benefits, and everything for that person. So this year we tried having high school administrative assistant teacher leaders, basically. We had quite a few go through administrative programs, and they have the endorsements. So why not? We don't have so many blocks to fill that we can work with scheduling to help with that. So that is the role. That's what we did with that program, and it seems to be working pretty well at the high school. So moving forward, you will see a reduction in force of that position. It made sense. The pilot's working, so we have the capability to do that. We also have an AD position and things, so down the road, if it's still not working, we could combine and work on things like that. But not a total loss, but it's working well for our folks who can, grow from within. So we like that model. We also, our special education numbers did not justify filling a special education teacher role, so we did not fill that position. New positions, the admin assistant teacher leaders, not really new position, but that was within our teacher leaders program. We added our special ed numbers at the high school, where we had some severe and profound or transition student needs, justified a part-time high school special ed aide. So we added that, also piggybacked with one of our drivers, so it kind of worked well. And then a finance assistant position. Last year was the first year we've ever not had a finance assistant in the finance office. And our CFO did an incredible job, but she was like never going home. So I'd like to keep her on board if that's possible, especially now with new mandates through ESSA and some of the bigger analytical things that we want to do with our budget, new programming and Medicaid expansion and all of this stuff. I need her eye really focused on that stuff and not so much on bill pay and payroll and kind of doing that kind of thing that takes up so much time. But so that's been going well. And in the meantime, the receptionist who transferred to that role was filled. So it's not an extra position, just filled her. So she's taking on additional administrative roles for our central office staff because we did cut down our central office as well. When you're looking at staffing, we use a staffing tool. So it's a spreadsheet, a worksheet we use based on criteria and the number of students in those grade levels. So I shared that staffing, what it looks like right now. And this is just on the presentation an example, but on the handouts we gave and on board docs, you'll see the full sheet of all the staffing. So you'll be able to see how we do that. 2.10 FTEs, full-time equivalent positions, based on what the criteria are. So you'll see what is required based on what the criteria says you should have, and then what we actually have. And then high school planning, this one is kind of funny because it looks at first glance like you're up, but with high school it's strange because with special ed teachers and your gen ed teachers, your career and tech ed teachers, there's caps on some classes. Some as you go through, your AP classes and some dual enrollment classes, you won't get the high enrollment numbers, but you still need to offer them to have your expansive, comprehensive profile of graduate coursework at the high school level. So what's used for this, and I stole this last year from Arlington and Loudoun. I'm like, somebody's got to find out because it doesn't match person for periods because, with SOQ, standards of quality, you need to provide a full planning period equal to the instructional time of each teacher. So that means that the students take a full load of periods, but you won't have teachers with the same load, if that makes sense. Right. So teachers teach 6 periods where kids are taking 8. So when you figure that ratio in, you need a formula to work it out so it's not class by class like it is at the elementary. You can kind of do that. So that's why this formula is used. So it's total number of students times the student periods divided by whatever criteria is needed in that section, and then divided by teacher periods, and then plus your number of SPED students, the criteria there in teacher periods. So these are the numbers, and that gives you your high school adjustment for FTEs because you have to adjust because it's not just ratio that way. So that's what we use to figure that in. So when you put all that together, with the other staffing as well, and that's on the other sheet I provide, we're over 0.60 FTE at the elementary and plus 0.02, so a foot of a person maybe at the high school. So we're pretty well staffed instructionally of where we think we need to be locally determined with those criteria as well as SOQs.
This is with the people we have now.
Right, yes. And an update with central office, these were the changes that went into effect this year. The staff we had at central office, we had 13. 17, 18, we knocked it down to 10.25. And then an update, the change now, we're up to 11.25 because I added in the finance assistant. But the finance assistant's not another administrator, that's more of an administrative clerk kind of person, assistant, yes. Okay. All right, so some cost projections. where it's fun. Okay, so SOQ raises. At the work session, the board had initially talked about giving staff a step plus 2%. That put us at about a 3.5% to 4% raise. And right here, you can see that would cost about $254,912 for that raise. Here you can see the other options, a step only, which is normally what we try to do. That's your step is your cost of living increase for staff. That's kind of what you want to do every year. A straight 3%, the step plus 2 is there, and then a straight 4, just in line with some other districts are doing. And we'll look at that in a second. We're being told to look at our insurance rates at a 12 to 15% increase. They do tell us that pretty much every year, and it comes in lower, but that's what you project just in case. So that's what that would cost. So this is, the governor's mandate is for SOQ. Basically because if he wants to give aid for teacher raises, he has to funnel it through the state formula or compensation supplements that way. So their SOQ raises, it would almost be easier if he said, we're going to give you funding for a 1% SOQ raise, you find more for teachers. Because then we could say, okay, that's easy. We can do a step for everyone. Teachers get 2% more. This doesn't work that way if he's going to provide aid for other. It's not such an issue for us that way because we have to find our own money, right? So other districts who are mandated to make these increases for teachers will need the state aid to make that happen. For us, we're going to have to find whatever elsewhere because 77% of our budget is from the locality. So that's the problem with that for us. When he says that kind of a raise, that means we're going to find the SOQ raises. So what does SOQ mean? Well, this is where it's hard. Well, okay, just give it to your SOQ positions, right? That makes sense. So just your standards of quality. But that's not as simple as it sounds because standards of quality really has tendrils in just about every position you have, just about. So you see here, okay, so take an example. Grade 1 teachers, 2.21 of you get a raise. That's not very equitable, nor would it make our staff very happy and keep our high morale that we have right now. Also, support staff. We're funded for 14 positions through SOQ that are support, central office, administrative. So you have to give those raises on SOQ positions. So that's why you won't see school districts just do SOQ unless it's a smaller amount that you can justify messing with the scales the other way. So, like I said, if the governor said do a 1 or 2% SOQ raise, but teachers should be getting more, okay, so then we could do SOQ for everyone, and then teachers we could do a 3 or 4, and it would change in the budget.
That's really equitable, isn't it? No.
Well, teacher salaries are really underfunded and pretty low across the board, so nationally, and this was an interesting fact I learned at, I forget what conference I was at, might have been a superintendent study group, but they took out the Northern Virginia localities where those salaries escalate the averages, and that put Virginia at the bottom 5 in the nation with teacher salaries.
It was Northern Virginia, it was Arlington, Fairfax, Falls Church, Prince William.
Loudon, Fairfax,
And Loudon,
yeah.
those
Yeah.
5. Right?
Yeah, when you take them out, then the pay scales for Virginia are bottom 5 in the nation.
Number 47, I think.
Whew. Yeah,
Which
so
is
that's scary.
criminal in its own way.
It is. And our teachers are so vitally important to the upbringing of our students, so it is very important. Here's some benchmarking data that's from the most current VEA study, salary study. Rappahannock is actually at the bottom of our base salary, teacher salaries around the region right now. And I do know superintendents across the region are making some bold moves with salaries, so we're going to need to stay competitive.
Well, there's some that are doing 8 and 12%.
Shenandoah did an 8% increase last year. They've
Fauquier-
made some great
Fauquier
gains.
Faulkner's looking at 8.
Yeah. So, yeah, and those counties have, the lower LCI, so they get more state funding to support those, especially when the governor says, we're going to give you more compensation money. They're like, great, we can do this. So I get that. It's a challenge for us. Master's degree, again, we're a little bit better there, but still lower comparatively. Then they rank, in that DEA study, they rank all the divisions based on their survey information. We are, for first-year teachers, 68th in the state for our salaries and 60th for master's degrees. 15-year point teachers, 58th. For, there's 136 divisions. Yep. And then 46th for the 15-year master's mark. 30-year, 72nd for bachelor's degree veteran teachers, and 59th for 30-year veteran teachers with masters. Just to give you an idea. So that's just considerations for keeping competitive with our salaries, but we have to, work with what we have.
Everybody else raises 3, and we raise 3. We're not where we need to be.
Another consideration that's been coming up quite a bit is the position of a school social worker, an MSW school social worker. We've had quite a bit of data that would seem to support this because of some of the increase in mental health that we're seeing, the increase in case management and CSA, the foster care programs and placements and things. So there is a need for that. However, I will say other considerations to that that you have to take into account. There is a non-SOQ cost of about $80,000 that comes with that position. We have had it in our budget before, and we didn't have very much success getting that person hired. Not as to say we couldn't amp up our recruiting efforts and really try to do more to get one. Participation in the LINK program with DSS. This is a partnership we're looking at to pay for through CSA funds, which would give you a LINK caseworker full-time in the county in our schools once a week that would just specialize with substance abuse intervention and prevention programming, and also casework with those families. So that's something we are in the works of right now, and that is coming, and that's at no cost because that's our CSA funding. So it'll actually save you a lot of money, I think, down the line as a county as a whole if it does what it's doing in other localities. Virginia College Advising Corps position is coming into effect. Now, this won't directly affect those kind of programs. They do target at-risk students to help support the FAFSA and college and career prep. However, they do take a lot of duties off of your school counselors, who then can spend more time direct counseling students, which looks like there's a mandate coming our way that says 80% of a school counselor's time must be spent direct counseling students. I'd like them to define for me what direct counseling students mean, because our counselors do a great deal more than just that. So there's a need for it. Trauma, substance abuse on the rise. We are in crisis, I believe, in this county with what we're seeing in our numbers. So we do need to do something. Specialized attention to at-risk students and families. So that's what that person could provide. We also asked surrounding counties, okay, well, how many other schools around us do this? It's not an SOQ that says you must have one yet, but just about everyone except Madison.
As an MSW?
Yeah, has a school, well, a school social worker at least, yeah.
That's
Clark,
a school,
Frederick.
yeah, because visiting teacher is no longer a title.
No,
Oh, so some of these social or former visiting teachers.
Probably, but they've had to go back to school
To
and get
school, get the-
recertified.
Additional certification.
It's an additional certification from the visiting teacher certification. Because that title is no longer acceptable in Virginia. I mean,
school social worker is what
it's
they.
now called school social worker.
Right. But their social workers is what we asked them. Fauquier has 9, which surprised me. Orange County has 2, and they said it's been a blessing. We want one more. We're trying to get into our system. Warren County 2, and you can see the numbers here. So just about everybody except Madison.
And us.
And
Page has one part.
You ought to put us down there too.
Yeah. I put it down.
You put it on there.
it says surrounding county.
Keep us down there.
All right, so that's another consideration. That position, if we're going to add it, we'll need to know that because that will have a budgetary implication. And then we asked our community also in our budget priority survey, and those are provided as well. You can see what the community said.
Could I go back a minute?
Oh, sure.
Second?
Which one?
What would be the possibility of teaming with social services and the school system to split a person financially? To say, in social services or the county, per se, would pay for half of a person, we pay for half of a person, and do it that way for the social service. We are small, we're a lot smaller than all these other school districts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if we could join with social services, if they could find funds for that, or the county could provide funds for that, then that would that be another option for us?
That's about with salary and benefits, is the 80,000.
Yeah,
But
salary
that's
and benefits.
higher than any teacher
It
who
will be.
teaches 30
Yeah, because they have a
years.
master's in
I
social work.
personally have a,
No,
That's
not
what
if
the
it's salary and benefits.
Salary and benefits.
salary and benefits, yeah.
but still, that's more than most teachers make. I'm not sure the social worker should have more importance than a teacher.
Well, and it's a different function than a teacher as well, so it falls into a different category. That's the market, labor market rate that we found, so that's what we would put it in
You
there.
know, I was actually, and I know it's so late to bring it up, but, I mean, that Madison agreement that we have, I wonder if there was a way to, because they're also wanting in the same area.
Well, that's a good idea.
It's
Yeah.
an agreement we could get for a shared asset.
Split the cost.
I don't know. It's a little late, because we do have to sign this thing, get it to them, so they can also sign it on the timeline that we're on. But we could always modify it later, maybe.
Yeah, I think we could have done that, because right now they are using our visiting teacher position to get done some of their educational work and truancy work, so that takes away from, our time with that person, which we do use for her. But part-time seems to be sufficient for what we're doing with that role. However, this would take on a whole other piece
Well,
of what we were
this
talking about.
person is not just doing special ed.
Oh, no.
The visiting teacher primarily did family reports, family studies for special
Right,
ed.
right.
That's all they did.
Quite a lot in truancy work and home visits and things like that. This person would be much more the intervention specialist for at-risk, behavioral at-risk, and substance abuse and other areas that we see where students need help dealing with the traumas and neglect that they may be experiencing in the school setting. So
Well, my
that's
point
different
would be-
than,
My point would be if it's half between school and social services, they could work, I mean, it's the same people. You're working with the same group of folks.
but they still have vacancies there they're trying to fill.
I
So-
understand that, but I mean, we need to fund it somewhere.
Well, if you're talking CSA funding, so you mean state, because if it's the county money, it's the same money wherever they
Yeah.
put it. I mean, so it wouldn't really be splitting the funding, but I get what you're saying, look for a creative way to maybe,
If you do half and half with Rappahannock and Madison, you're working with 3 times the number of people that a half-time person would be dealing with. If you're working half with us and half with social services, then you're working with the same cadre,
well, and that's what the LINK program person will be doing. They'll be
but they're only here one day a week.
at the school,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm
But they'll be in
talking
the
2.5.
county servicing the families more, but yeah,
And the link is narrow, it's substance abuse.
yes,
Right.
Not trauma or
right.
other types of trauma.
Yeah, although 97% of our cases are due to substance
Sure,
abuse.
sure,
So
it would be a big,
there's that.
a big
And then the rest is social
Yeah.
welfare.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So it's a consideration.
Yep.
Community input, the budget surveys are out, and the results are in. So 233 people responded to our survey. It is a good return. And we had 9.8% students, 52% parents, 12% school employees. Teachers were only about 7.7%, administrators 0.43%. Community members were 30.5, just about 30.5% community members, and then other 7.3. And remember, I did go visit all the teachers too, so I had their input already, so that's probably why that number was low. And this is what the survey said. Top 3 choices among those groups: number 1, teacher salaries. That came up number 1. Number 2, school safety. And number 3 was teacher and staff benefits. And along with the survey, I attached all the comments that were given. So good, bad, ugly, whatever, they're out there for you to see. But what I think you'll see is that overall, we have a very supportive community of the schools and especially of our teachers. So that's what came out of it. So building block scenarios, here's just a couple of examples from what we'd like the board to consider. When we build this budget on, do you want to do a straight 4%, health insurance 12%? Do we add the school social worker in, see where we come out for the March budget of need public hearing? And that's what the cost is associated with that, each one. So each one will have these kind of costs all added in. Now, that doesn't mean that is going to be the ask to the county. Okay, that just means that's the cost. So now we go back into our budget and try to find what we can to bring it as far down as we can. And we do those if we can. I mean, in a lot of areas we've done that. So you can only squeeze so much and still get the same product, right? So that's what we'll look at. All right, so questions about anything here or?
So this, so the last time, at the last work session, we had said step plus 2 was going to be our target, right?
Yep.
And so this $250,000, based upon how we receive funding from the state, so I'm trying to make sure this is true. What I'm trying to say, so you can tell me I'm wrong, it's okay. Right? This situation, we will get 50,000 of that from the state, 200,000 of it will have to come from local source. Basically, right? It's good for people to know that. And it is, because when we say, woohoo 5%, we have to know that, we're the ones that are going to be covering 80% of that. And so while the current summation is 453, some portion of that will be coming from the state. Some of it will. 50K of the 450 will be coming from the state. The rest of it, we got to drum up locally somehow. Also, just to make sure we understand what this means, we're going to give our teachers a raise that mostly we're going to take back, according to this. The health insurance increase is $200,000, and we're going to give $250,000. We're going to take the majority of whatever we gave, and we're going to be taking it back.
That's if, well, the cost here is if we were absorbing the increase.
If we're absorbing the increase.
So that, we may need to have conversations with the staff and say, okay, well, what if we did a straight fee across the board? What if we did raise the rates a bit for them and lower the employer contribution? Those are things we can do when we see, how it plays out. Right now, it's conjecture at this point. So when we know how that shakes out, then we can have those. And the staff is prepared to have those discussions. We've talked about it already. When it's decision-making time, let's say, okay, guys, we've got this, but I need to find this much more, and here's how we can do it with benefits or, those type of things. So we will have those conversations.
All right, any other questions? And you said the ADM we're targeting is 825
Yes.
for next year? You're looking this evening whether we're going to stick with our original story, right, or not?
That's the big one I want to know, because that's going to be the biggest factor in planning the budget is we've said that the step plus 2 is where we're going to go. The governor's mandate is a 5 within the biennium. You did 2 for this year, so that's the first year, so you're mandated for 3. But we're.
Next year.
Right, for next year.
Next year, correct.
So it seems like at this point, we're trying to make a budget that would cover what we think all of our needs are. So our priorities are giving the staff a raise, which is number 1 on the survey. All the numbers you just gave us show us that that should be a priority if we want to be competitive, right? And then another big need we have is,
I don't even think that'll keep us competitive.
I wanted to keep us
ourselves.
competitive. I mean, it would keep us treading water at least.
That's what it would do.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like we can do anything but at least start at this 4% at least.
Well, and for this time,
For this
because
point,
this
early,
point, you're kind
yeah.
of mandated with the whole done that before. We do a salary scale study and say, well, this salary scale, nurses, school nurses, looks a little inequitable across the board. That's the scale we manage with. So you can do that
We
with
just,
different
we
groups.
just raised that scale significantly 3 years ago.
Right, so I just,
And we haven't, and still haven't caught up,
yeah.
you know, and that was a big hit.
If I was a teacher, would I prefer to have a step plus 2? I mean, isn't there some benefit to a teacher to continue to move steps rather than ignore the step and increase the
Well,
scale?
and that's a good point. So what we've done when we did the straight 2% was we adjust their number. Their years go with them. So we've done a lot of work trying to get the scales to equate to years.
So there's
So
no
it
flat
makes it-
spots.
Yes, right.
Sure.
So those are adjusted and then you do the flat percentage. So you're still okay and the years follow. So we're not going to do the freeze where you are and we never know how many years you have because that is a nightmare when you're in HR trying to transfer people and work on that. So the number of years will follow and the adjustments are a little different. So,
That keeps you from, that's the reason we did the master scale and the doctoral scale, because in the previous years, they just add 4 steps. And so you had no idea
yeah.
the longevity, and then you had flat spots at the top where
Right,
people
right,
had a master's degree and they were at the top and they were only 12 years in the system. You know, that kind of.
I remember that. I was one of those people, got my master's and got the 4 steps for a total of $465.
Congratulations.
Yeah, $50,000 in debt.
Atta
Yeah,
boy.
awesome.
We're so proud of you.
There you go.
Hey.
Worked out, didn't it?
Yes.
It's a nice certificate.
It's an investment.
So, you're saying it works out either way?
Right.
As far as the master's in social worker position, it seems to me that we've got some creative ideas that we need to pursue before we commit to a full-time position, right? Right?
I think a combination would be the way to go, personally.
I think
There's
it's
some
better.
kind of a sharing thing.
Speaking as a former teacher, starting the social worker above what the, I mean, is that all going to
It's-
one
well, it's-
salary?
It's
I mean,
basically.
how come there's no equity between teachers and the social worker?
Well, there would be. So this social worker is going to make $40,000. Half of what they're making goes to their benefits. This 80K is salary plus benefits, right?
This is
Well,
what's in our budget.
Well, the benefits are usually 25%. So 80 might be a high
All right,
number.
so
Depends.
80 is ridiculous.
Depends, but you
But
have
if
to know
they
what the
were-
market
If
is.
they, and the benefits they're gonna take, if it's a family plan, mid-year, so you benchmark on that, it may come in lower than that. We just don't know without a person there, so.
I would say we've tried to get them before too, and we've been unsuccessful.
Yeah.
You have a link coming regardless, correct?
Hmm.
You have the link coming regardless.
Mhm.
Start with that.
It's a
see
good
where
start.
it goes.
I mean, our intent was to,
And we
Be
tried that
proactive
last
and-
year before for social worker.
We
and
did, we
couldn't
did.
get anybody to bite at the salary anyway.
Yep.
So start with the link and see where it goes and see if you can build on Larry and
For the medicine.
see how much help we can get.
And this is just to get a feeling for what the board feels, because I'll give the superintendent's budget of need to you at that meeting. So I'm just trying to feel you out for those things, so it may change in
If
between
costs
now
were
and then,
not,
but I'd like to
were
know.
not an issue at all, I would say to have that $80,000 for the school social worker and see, seems like most people have that. And I would, and I understand the reservations about, going step by step.
Well, I think there's definitely a need. And I think as Chris said, you may want to just kind of tiptoe into the need and see where it leads you.
well, as long as we're making
Doing the-
progress.
Huh?
If we're making forward progress this year, which is our intent,
Right.
see where we are.
We're gonna make progress.
Yep.
We're already, the major need, the major desire is for teacher salaries and benefits. Invest the money, as Ms. Meyer says, back into the teachers. We're not getting anybody to bite at 80 grand anyway, put it back into the teachers, start with the link, see where it goes, if it's a benefit. And then if Madison will bite, because they use our visiting teacher that isn't a position anymore anyway. See if they'll bite. They don't have one either, maybe they can do something with the state.
So you still, all right, so I think I have your feeling on that. What do you, so you want to stick with the step and 2, or did you want to do a straight 4? Did you want to try for or just see how best we can make them.
I personally would like to see us straightforward, or a step in 3, or whatever it comes out to be,
Yeah.
step in 2,
Step
or
is-
2.5,
I
or
like
whatever.
step, but I don't, step in 3 would be a good
Whatever
compromise.
whatever we don't do this year, we're gonna be doing it next year. So,
Well, I think we have to stay competitive, because again, you're gonna get, there's only, as they said the other day, if a teacher lives in Amosville,
It's quicker to get to
it's a
Fauquier.
2-minute ride to Fauquier.
Well, most teachers don't live in Rappahannock because they
And other
can't afford it.
Well, there's some, yeah.
And other districts are looking at this as their one chance to really beef up the scales because they're getting the aid to do it. And
Fauquier is losing people to Loudon,
They are.
left and right. And he said that there's 4 teachers that live in Fauquier, and the closest school is in Loudon, and that's where they're teaching, from where they live.
Yeah, competitive market, there's teacher shortages everywhere, so we'll be looking at those things. We're also looking in next year to use our teacher leader stipends to build up bonuses for added endorsements, because I'm not so sure with the continuing trends, I'm going to be able to support the same level of staff. You just can't reasonably, rationally do that. But you make yourself much more marketable and versatile when you have added endorsements, so teachers are willing to do that. We have several already who are approached me and said, we'd like to get additional endorsements. Then
And
they're
we're
teaching.
paying for that.
Well, yeah, we can help with some of that, but now those requirements are a lot less. In most cases, it's just passing a test or 2, which we can help with that, and then give a bonus for that one-time added endorsement as an incentive. It won't cost you long-term because you're not really doing much of the salary at that point, but at least you give a bonus and there's an incentive, and then you have a more versatile staff that you can move around to help with, teaching English and history, or CTE classes can move around and,
But, I think we have quality people, and it's
yeah.
important to keep them.
so for now, right now, we're just trying to shoot at a target, right? And make sure we've got a good starting point. So why don't we start out with 4%?
I would love it.
And we say we're gonna go to the straight 4, and we'll work with whatever the health insurance is until we get to haggling with our own budget about where we're gonna find money.
Okay.
And you look at the surrounding districts and what they're gonna be requesting.
They might be bluffing.
No, they're not even.
They're not bluffing.
I know 3 of them, and I know what they're doing. Now, the boards might not go along with what they're shooting
Doing,
for,
yeah.
but I know what they're shooting for.
Well, let's see what we can do, and in March, we'll try to get this out. Basically, tomorrow, Stacy and I are going to be crunching these numbers to build the budget, so we'll do what we can, figure out the best course of action that we feel, and that'll be the superintendent's budget of need report after weighing all of this in, what we'll be bringing to you as a public hearing in March. So we'll try to get all those materials out far ahead of that, at least 2 weeks in advance, with the ancillary report that goes with the budget to explain and
So
justify.
you'll get it out to the public.
All over the place, yeah.
Good.
We'll get it all out there so everyone knows kind of our justification and our thought processes and can respond accordingly with what we have.
And I forgot to look at the calendar. That public hearing that we're doing is really at the same time we have our next monthly meeting.
It is.
So it's the second Tuesday of March, right? 6:30?
Yes. So. Oh, it is.
March the 12th.
Yeah.
March 12th, 6:30, probably in the, we're gonna be in the auditorium or gonna be back here? Depends on the play practice. Did we get chased out one time because of,
Well, in April, with the Board of Supervisors, we'll be in the elementary in April. And I think this one we stayed in here, didn't we? I think so.
well,
It's on
it's on the
the.
calendar,
wrote
I just can't remember.
It should be in the comments in the next school board meeting.
Oh,
It's, no, we're in the high school auditorium,
Auditorium.
March 12th.
all right, thanks. It's,
Yes.
thanks.
Okay. All right, and that concludes the superintendent reports.
Thanks. If you look at the agenda, you'll see there is time this evening during public comment for 7.1 is generic public comment. 7.2 is for public comment specifically related to the budget. So as we get to that point, you can segment your comments that way. All right, moving on, Headwaters representative, is there a report?
Yes, I have a report. Thank you. The after-school enrichment program now has 27 students enrolled for this session, and they're running 3 days a week. They got a grant from Walmart for that extra day. Summer chorus, the enrollment has begun, and it's going to be June 17th to 29th at the elementary school. And it's for grades 1 through 11. And it'll also be a junior chorus and a senior chorus. So they're expanding that a little bit too. And then, as I said at the last meeting, information gathering has begun for a new strategic plan, and we're expected to participate in that as school board members. And the annual report is coming out and will be publicized in a time in the future. I don't know just when. I thought it was in the past, but it's in the future. So we will see it, so it'll be interesting to see that report as well.
Great, thanks. MVGS?
Yeah, we did. We had a meeting on January 17th. 4 students do a presentation on the Envirothon team, which was really kind of cool. And then we talked budget. So there were 4 additional slots. If you remember, there were 4 slots given up. Culpeper got 1, Frederick got 1, and Fauquier took 2. They took 2 of those spots. The proposed budget for 2020, the Mountain Vista Governor's School is a .49 because they comprise it's a compilation of all the counties that they deal with. So that budget's a .49. They're looking at an 8.8 in budget increase. Slot increase for us will be 13%. So we have 8 slots. They cost us today $46,584, and for 2020 it'll be $52,748. The difference being $61,064. We now have 9 students enrolled because we have an at-large slot, and we've had as many as 10 students enrolled. So right now we'll only have 1 slot available next year if everybody stays in. So that's going to be a really competitive slot. But that's what it's all about. Information night, Mike Wenger went with us to information night. He is the Rappahannock's representative to LFCC. Had a wonderful time. Mrs. Bynum and her youngin went.
Brought an extra student.
And an extra student, and about 100 other people were there.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to hear.
Yeah,
about
it was
the
well
school.
done,
Yeah.
as it always is. It started on time and it ended on time. That was all good. That was my
All
report.
right, thanks. The next item on the agenda is the policy committee met concerning the change in policy regarding Narcan, but it's called NALA, N-A-L-O-X-O-N-E. Ms. Hayes?
Naloxone?
Naloxone is what it's called in the policy manual, so that there was a change made. And is there a recommendation from the committee tonight? Who's on the committee? Chris?
Yeah,
So you've reviewed this already.
right. And the state made it very nice
Yes, they did.
because they got to it before we
Yeah,
did.
we back approved.
Oh, did they? Good,
determined
good,
it, So all we have to do is sign.
And so all we did is insert it into the top school
Great.
board policy. So it was very, very,
It's highlighted the change. So what happened was House Bill 2318 got what is called engrossed into law because they realized after they passed the protections that law enforcement and emergency service personnel have with this, with the administration of Narcan, is that they forgot some essential personnel like school nurses who were being told by the board of nurses that, you know, the liability may exist, so you don't want to get into that, which, you know, kind of caused havoc with our own policy to say it's okay when you have no legal backing to do so. So we were happy to see that happened actually like 3 days before our policy committee meeting, so that made it easier. So the revision is highlighted here. So basically, it was an easy integration, just like our epinephrine administration in our policy JHCD. So we added a paragraph right under the epinephrine that you can see there. So basically same language taken from the Virginia Code as well as theirs.
And it'd be our intention to adopt this change this evening.
Could I ask you a question? Should it say administered to any student or any person at the bottom, the last sentence?
Oh, person, yeah, person.
Any person.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the rest says student because this kind of governs our,
I don't want to
covers our
ruin it, but,
The policy is administering medicine to students, so
Yeah, it says.
it has to be,
But-
two students.
but if an adult were in trouble, we could administer it.
Well, I think your Good Samaritan law kind of protects you there,
I think
but
so.
for our own policy with students in
Okay,
particular,
all right.
I think
just
that's
didn't
why
wanna-
this policy is necessary.
Yeah, it said that at the time.
Yeah, because it's policy is just for the students, right?
all right, good,
We did talk
Darn,
about
I'm sorry, space.
good. So state came through and saved a lot of time. That's a good story.
Surprisingly.
Surprising.
Yeah.
Years.
Can we give them some notes on some other?
2
There was,
years.
That was one of the other subjects we talked about in our
Yeah.
discussion. How about this? Making it hard.
All right.
Right, what's today's date? We'll write this date down.
Well,
So,
we did write it because it was very nice.
All right, so, yeah, it's pretty clear, right? And the policy committee, it's good to go, right? Okay, the next thing on the agenda says post office location. Now, I'm not even sure what to say, because I don't know anything about this actually, so.
Well, and Vice Chair, Mr. Larry Grove wanted this on the agenda for some discussion, so
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and it'd be great to discuss it, I just don't know what we're gonna discuss, I don't know anything, tell me
Well,
something.
well, all I know is what I've read in the paper,
Okay,
okay? And the paper indicates to me that the post office has basically decided to move a new post office to Bank Road, which will mean our schoolhouse road will be a conduit for post office trucks. And that concerns me, that we'll have large post office trucks floating down past the bus lot, making the turn and coming back up. Or making a U-turn on 211 and going down Bank Road. And I don't think anybody has contacted our superintendent about her feelings about this, from the post office, or anybody else. So I don't know whether we have an issue to talk about, or whether we have a position we want to take as a board. It just bothers me, it'd be a constant travel right in front of school.
How many trucks are you talking about? How large a vehicle?
I don't know.
I think we don't know any.
Yeah,
I don't think it's, I mean, I'm not constantly in Little Washington, but I don't think it's massive semis coming in and out of there with mail for the post office.
I guess they're moving because of traffic.
They're moving because of the
Pressure.
building
Because they
and
can't
for
do it.
size and whatnot, other things, but I don't think we're talking about semi trucks coming constantly through like a construction zone. You may see, what, 1 or 2 a day, maybe, at the most.
I don't
How
know.
much mail really is gonna come to the Washington area to be that big of a heartache? I wouldn't think it would be that much of a difference.
I think that's the question, we don't
That's
know.
We don't know.
Request
But
a study.
to me, I would rather see it move someplace else so you won't have the problem because the county's not gonna get smaller.
Personally, I don't think it'd be a problem, and anything that grows that little tiny business district that will bring in some tax revenue to the school, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, that'll bring in more trucks.
That's where they put it, that's where it is.
Yeah,
So
well, that's
that's a
true, too.
county issue, we can't control that, but
I
I don't see more than a couple trucks.
The mayor knows
mail
more than we
carriers.
do, I think.
Yeah, we'll hear from him in public.
No, we'll hear something,
Yeah.
sure.
I just wanna make sure I understand, what it is we're discussing, but
My
for me,
concern-
I don't have any data.
My
I
concern's
don't know,
the
everybody's
traffic.
asked any questions, I don't think we have anything to base anything off of yet. So
Yeah.
it's a good question,
Good to know.
it would be good to know.
You'll have patrons,
Sure.
that'll come
Lots
to
of
and from.
I
But
don't really
There
think
are
it's a
probably
school
a
issue.
we
hundred
already
people.
have
Anything.
People coming to and from the winery and to and from the different venues back
You
here
don't have
behind
anybody
the
in the
elementary
winery
school.
during the day, during the week.
And the sheriff's office that helps us direct our traffic at two complex times of the day
Is already in place.
is in place with
But
whatever additional traffic could be dictated by that same building. Or whatever businesses land there, I guess. And did the post office decide it? The U.S. Postal Service, do they decide locations of things?
I guess they do.
That's what it seems like.
That's what it's been.
Mayor's gonna talk later.
Mayor's gonna let us, yes. Mayor's gonna let us know in just a minute. All right, so is there any other, I don't think we have anything to contribute to the
No, I
conversation.
don't. I just wanted it to be on our radar.
It's on the radar, so we're gonna move on to public comment. So this first period of public comment, the goal will be, yes, will be related to things unrelated to budget, so that we can move to the budget-oriented things in a separate segment. All right, does anyone like to address the board this evening? Yes, sir, please rise. State your name if anybody doesn't know you, and your district.
Good evening, I'm John Sullivan, Hampton District, former mayor of Washington. And with me tonight is Fred Catlin, who would also like to speak, who is the current mayor of Washington. We're kind of a tandem team here. I do want to talk about the post office and perhaps answer some of the questions that you just raised. What I really want to talk about is what, sensitize you to the question of safety, citizen involvement, and traffic lights. All relate to the issue of the location of the post office. The post office has decided to move to Bank Road. They rejected what we thought was a viable alternative in Washington. We have reason to believe they're now reviewing that decision. I'm not going to talk about leaving Washington. Traffic. There are a fair number, I wouldn't overstate it myself, of trucks that go in and out of the town of Washington for postal delivery. The very reason that they want to leave the town is their concern of all their truck volume. Now, they've never actually told us what their truck volume is. Related to this is that the town has been told that when the post office moves to Bank Street, the citizens and the county offices and the box holders will have to come to Bank Street to get their mail, as opposed to getting it delivered like everybody else at home. What are the implications of that? There are over 425 mailboxes in the town of Washington. Now, I don't know how many people are going to go every day, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, 200 people drive to the new location of that. And is it 150? Is it 200? 225? I don't know. But I'll come back to that point. You've got all the county government located in the town of Washington. They're going to be coming down. So there's going to be a significant increase in traffic, however you cut it. I won't go through, as Larry sort of started to, but you can just imagine, since you know the roads better than I even, where that traffic's going to flow, coming from the east, coming in the crossover. They either go straight into Schoolhouse Road, or they do a U to go to the bank. If they're leaving, when they're leaving, if you're going to Sperryville, you're going to leave that post office, and you're going to do either two things. You're going to go out on the 211 by the bank, go up, go east, do a U, you come back. Or you're going to say, let's do a shortcut. I'll just cut Bank Street and Bank Road and come up Schoolhouse Road and come straight on out. And to the left will be a sheriff down there with a guy me how to cross over. There's going to be a significant amount of traffic. And I don't think everybody has fully realized the implications of that. Who is going to benefit from the post office being located here? The owner of the property will, and that's fine, benefit, no problem. I mean, that's right. Maybe the postal workers will benefit a little bit by some comfort or ease of access. very small percentage of the 22747 zip code people will benefit, ones in the very southern part. The county as a whole is not going to benefit. If you were to put a CVS drugstore into that location, and there were traffic implications, one might say, you know, the county wants a CVS. I mean, it's a service. It's good for everybody. This postal operation is only going to service people in 22747 too. So I would just raise the question, what's the cost of doing that and what are the benefits? Lastly, and this is really what I want to focus on, is citizen input. The post office has decided to put its new location right over here. Has there been any public discussion? No. To speak of. I spoke to the Board of Supervisors the other day, but there's been no public discussion. Have they asked anybody in the school system for input? You all know the answer to that. No. Have they asked the sheriff for her input in terms of safety issues? And she's got deputies out there twice a day, as you well know. Have they asked the sheriff? No. Is there any specifics about the proposal that are public yet? No. Do we know how much traffic the post office estimates will be coming from the town of Washington? No. So it seems to me that it's worthy of a public discussion. What would I ask? I think that you might consider, A, asking VDOT for traffic impact statement, or asking the supervisors to ask for one. They don't have to do one for reasons of zoning, I didn't go into. They do not have to do a traffic impact study. They're only going to do it if they are pressured to do one. I can explain why if you want to know. You might ask for a representative from the postal organization to come here before citizens and explain what they're going to do, why they're doing it, what's the potential impact. You might raise questions with Board of Supervisors. Because this property is zoned commercial, there really is no trigger that makes a traffic impact study occur, or that really has the Board of Supers getting involved unless they want to, supervise. So that's just what I would, it seems that you've got a stake in this thing. And I would just encourage a discussion. Whatever that discussion leads, you know, fine. I thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
The second part of the tandem. I'm
The tag team.
The tag team. I'm Fred Catlin. I'm the current mayor of Little Washington. I live in the Hampton district as well. You're asking about truck traffic, and I thought I'd respond to a couple of those. One of the things that the postmaster and the Washington Post Office said is that she thought that consolidation would soon happen between the post office in Washington and the one in Sperryville. If you do that, you're now doubling the number of the post office. So you've got that. There has also been some citizens who have come to me and said that there has also been some discussion going around that they would also consolidate the Flint Hill into these. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. The fact is that we don't have any information about that. There has not been any kind of traffic study. The other thing that you mentioned is that it would be nice for the county to have revenues. The Postal Service is a private organization, or semi-private, but it's also government. I don't think if you had another straight business use, I think there would be a lot more financial benefit to the county for use of that property for that purpose. But the other point, and the main point that I share with you, is this is a dangerous situation. In 3 hours, 2 hours on a Thursday afternoon and 1 hour on a Saturday morning, we had over 100 signatures for people on a petition who expressed concern. That was probably about 95% of the people who came in. So in the space of just 3 hours, you had 100 people coming into the post office. So you can imagine, as John Sullivan said, you're going to have an extraordinary amount of traffic coming in. And the site that's in the town is going to be coming out onto a road that's 25 miles an hour versus coming out onto 211. And you've got U-turns, you've got a number of other things. There is a question as to whether this would lead to a traffic light at that intersection. And who would pay for that, whether it would be the county. I think part of the reason that I am up here is my concern as a citizen of the county, my concern as the representative of the town of Washington for the people's safety in the town. But what if there is an accident there? And you have a chance to say something, to try to get some kind of traffic study. I don't want a traffic accident to occur at that intersection without all of the public officials who have a chance to say, there really should have been a traffic study before this was done. So, I thank you for your time.
Thanks. Thanks, Rick. Anyone else? Appreciate the information. All right, moving on to the budget, topic of the budget. Anybody want to speak to the board related to the budget? Yes, ma'am.
A bunch of us, aren't we?
Hello, I'm Madeline Bynum. Barbara Dolphy, whom you all know, called me from Georgia this afternoon and said, I wanted to be there and read this letter about the school social worker, but please do it for me because here I am in Georgia. So her letter is long and I have copies for you.
That'd be
In
great.
the interest of time, I'm just going to read you a synopsis
Great.
so that I will have fulfilled my responsibility and commitment to Barbara.
Friend.
Okay?
Great.
Yeah, we'll cover for you.
Yeah, thank you. I did it, right?
You did it all.
As you know, Barbara has had a career as a public health as a mental health worker. She worked 22 years as a school social worker in Fairfax County Public Schools. Now here comes her letter. It's from Barbara, except it's my synopsis. So here we go. Superintendent Grimsley's recent interview in the Rappahannock News sounded an alarm about the rise in the number of our students reporting having entertained thoughts of suicide, a problem that crosses socioeconomic lines. A teacher is often the first to notice a student's psychological vulnerability, brought on by trauma or stresses that may originate at school, at home, or in the community. Behavior such as decline in school performance, depression, or angry acting out may in fact be a plea for help from a child or teen experiencing deep psychological pain. It is a plea that our most caring classroom teachers are unable to respond to adequately, nor should they be expected to. When they see behavior that causes concern about a student's well-being, they should be able to make a referral to a school social worker, a mental health professional with a master's degree in social work. A social worker would be able to talk with a troubled student, with the family, and school personnel with sensitivity and understanding. Out of these conversations, an individual plan, often linking to available community services that provides support for the at-risk student, would emerge. Critical to the success of such a plan is the fact that the school social worker would check in regularly with the student, assuring him or her of ongoing support. And that whole piece of loneliness, which is always a part of it, I think that really speaks to that. Also of critical importance, of course, and Superintendent Grimsley mentioned it, is the role the school social worker has in introducing and implementing early intervention programs within the school community. Of course, early intervention is way better than fixing the problem when it exists. So Barbara goes on to say that a community-supported response to Dr. Grimsley's call for action is urgently needed. As a piece of that response, I urge the inclusion in this year's school budget of the position of a school social worker. And I thank you for Barbara.
Thank you.
Here are
And you have copies.
the copies of what I read.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eve Brooks. I am a social worker by training, but not a clinician. One of the experiences that I've had is developing school-based mental health systems. The reason this is so important, and it is particularly important in rural areas, is that there are no people who are qualified to as clinical help, therapeutic help in this county who are available to children who are on Medicaid. Our school district can help to fund a clinical position. And around the country, particularly now that we have Medicaid. So that's a piece of the funding possible. And in the end, it may not be that the school district has to pay the full $80,000. But it's worth it anyway, even if we can't claim those insurance pieces, because that clinical need is desperate in a county like this, where we cannot turn to other people. If you were in Culpeper, you might go around the corner. You might find a clinician. If you're in Fauquier, you could, but not here. And every time you put a child in a car to try to get clinical help, they don't get there. Most of the time, they'll get there a few times, but you really cannot have the kind of therapeutic help at the distances that we have here. It is increasingly across the country the schools that provide the help children need. So I am begging you to please keep that $80,000 in the budget, and we can work together to find a way of making sure that we can stabilize that position. But think of it as a clinical person, not simply a BA position. And then you get the picture of why we so desperately need it. Thank you.
What district?
Oh, I live in Sperryville, so I guess it's Piedmont.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
My name is Betsy Deedle, and I live in Wakefield District, and I am the former chair of the Child Care and Learning Center Board. I sit on an ad hoc committee of people who are looking at the health needs assessment in this county, and I'm a board member of the PATH Foundation. I am not nearly as articulate as Eve when it comes to this need, but I am definitely channeling Barbara Adolfi. I've sat in a number of board meetings with her, school board meetings, where she has said again and again how desperately we need a licensed clinical social worker. And I just want to add a few more points to what Marilyn and Barbara and Eve have already said tonight. Creating a safe, orderly, and loving environment is critical to educating and preparing all of our children to achieve their highest potential and contribute to society. And one of the critical linchpins of making sure that that happens is a school social worker. And that needs to be a licensed clinical school social worker who is a professional. It's important not just for our students, and we clearly have a lot of students who are hurting at all levels, but it's important for the parents and the families in this district. It's important for the school personnel. It's important, that person is an important community liaison, and it's important for the district at large. I'd finally add that in most jurisdictions in the state now, the state standard for school social worker position has been reclassified as an administrative pay scale. And that's really an important bar that I think we need to recognize. There's a reason why it's called an LCSW, clinical. We don't go to a nurse when we are desperately ill. We go to a doctor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to read a letter on behalf of Sally Morgan, who couldn't be here tonight. She's with the Mental Health Association. But I'm Brittany Dwyer. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Mental Health Association. We serve Rappahannock and Fauquier County. Sally regrets that she can't be here tonight, but she asked me to read this on her behalf. So just a few comments about the crucial role a master's level social worker would play in supporting the mental health of our students in Rappahannock County Public Schools. The Mental Health Association is a nonprofit advocacy and action group, and we believe that nothing is more important to our community than supporting the well-being of young people. We know that half of all mental health issues begin by the age of 14, 3/4 by age 24. So a focus on prevention and early intervention in those early years has the potential to affect the entire course of many young lives, and in many cases to literally save lives. We also know from local data collection efforts like the Pride Survey that depression and anxiety are currently serious problems among 30% of our students, and that many young people turn to substance use as a way of coping with these issues. Paired with the data Superintendent Grimsley recently shared from the local school climate survey, about 17% of high school students having had thoughts of suicide, the need to provide supports to students who are struggling is clear. The Mental Health Association is willing to partner with the county schools in addressing these serious concerns. We've provided mental health first aid training for all of the Rappahannock teachers. We're actually teaching a class on Monday as well. And we have offered our assistance to Superintendent Grimsley in several other ways in the coming months, which we're very excited about. And for the past 12 years, our association has led the Mental Health School Coalition in Fauquier County, which now includes leadership from the Rappahannock County schools. So we're really happy to have them involved. And through our close partnerships with educators and community stakeholders, we've seen the value of strong school-based services, including school social workers. School social workers are trained mental health professionals who can work directly with students on social, emotional, and life adjustment issues through group and individual counseling, crisis intervention, conflict resolution, anger management, and developing intervention strategies to increase academic success. At the same time, school social workers are really an invaluable resources to teachers as well. They can provide professional development and they can assist with behavior management. And finally, school social workers are also the link between home, school, and community, involving families, school staff, and students themselves, both in assessing students' needs and in mobilizing family, school, and community resources to solve problems. We believe the Rappahannock County Public Schools are committed to meeting the mental health needs of the students, and we also know that it can be challenging for a small school system to find the ideal number of professional staff and to fit this into your budget. But we also believe that investment in a master's level social worker is fundamental to addressing the mental health and substance use issues that affect students' academic and social success, and that such a position would be of tremendous value to students, teachers, and families. And if I could just add my personal note on this. I'm an alum of Rappahannock County Public Schools. I had the privilege of attending school here from the time, go Panthers! From the time I was in kindergarten through 12th grade. I started out at CCLC. My parents graduated from here. My grandmother even went here, believe it or not. So I come from a long line. I'm also in the final semesters of a master's program where I'm pursuing a social work degree with a concentration in children, youth, and families. So as part of my motivation in seeking a social work degree, I realized when looking around this amazing community that we just didn't have a lot of resources here. When I was a student in the schools, there really wasn't a designated person to help with mental health issues. We had phenomenal school counselors that helped me access scholarships and helped me provide for life after graduation, but when it came to helping with the overwhelming anxiety I felt when I got up every morning and had to come into the classroom, it felt like there was nowhere to turn. That anxiety unquestionably impacted my school performance. It had a negative effect on my life until my parents sought the help of an outside licensed clinical social worker for me to go to receive counseling services during my junior year at RCPS. But had that social worker been available in the schools, I probably would have gotten help at a much younger age. I could have learned how to manage anxiety in elementary school or middle school versus waiting until those symptoms were so severe that I felt like I couldn't function. Having a social worker to check in with on a regular basis would have been amazing, and it probably would have saved my family hundreds upon hundreds of dollars they really didn't have to begin with to help me get counseling. I consider myself fortunate because my family was willing to pay for me to get the help that I needed to manage my anxiety. But for many families in our community, that isn't an option. Many families don't have the financial means to send their children to a counselor outside of the school system, which means that more than likely the issues surrounding that group of students will continue to follow them while they're in school and really into adulthood. Tonight I'm asking for the school board to understand that the problems I faced in school aren't unique. Many of my former classmates and peers struggled with mental health issues, and many of them didn't receive help. And it wasn't because they didn't want help. It was because it wasn't available or wasn't accessible to them. Having that help come from our school system would be a huge step forward, and it can make all the difference in how your students' lives turn out.
We need to look at taking care of the whole student, and right now we're missing a critical part of that, which is taking care of their mental health and well-being. We have a great school system. We have excellent leadership by Dr. Grimsley. I love working with her. We have teachers who care about their students. We have an educated school board, an involved school board. We have engaged community members in this room. And we have an opportunity to make our school system even more vibrant by adding a school social work position. Let's live up to RCPS's vision of empowering every student to reach his or her potential by giving them another resource to make that happen. Thank you.
Wow. Hey, can you tell me your name again?
Brittany Dwyer.
Brittany? Yeah. Wow.
Brittany's a star.
Thank you so much for.
You're gonna follow that? You wanna follow that? I mean, Mr. Davis, I mean, you're an amazing speaker, but are you sure? That was wonderful, young lady. I like the second half that was yours, better than the letter. And,
That personal
great, very educational. Thank you, sorry for that. I'm still overwhelmed by it. Go ahead, sorry.
Bill Needle from the Wakefield District.
It's good to see you again.
Thank you. It's been a long time
It has.
since I've come to a school board meeting. When I moved here in 1982, I came regularly to the school board meetings because I'd spent the first 17 years of my life involved in education, both at the secondary school level and the college level. I also had 5 children who attended public school. This evening, I'd like to talk about the broader implications of what the superintendent is trying to do in this school with the help of this board. We have lived with an illusion in the entire 37 years I've lived here that education can be made cheaper. Once upon a time, this school board accounted for 70% of the annual county budget. It's a long way from 70% today. How did we get here? We got here in part because people forget that building a public institution like a school system involves you in competition. It isn't a free ride. As the superintendent has pointed out in her remarks, the competition for teachers is real. And when you hear the statistics, and when we discover that we're 5th state in the United States, that is appalling. And when we look at where Rappahannock County stands in the state of Virginia, that's even more distressing. I speak to you as I have to previous school boards in the hope that this time I can get you to listen to one proposition. And that is, it is not your responsibility to find the money to fund the public school system. That responsibility resides with the Board of Supervisors. You are not the Board of Supervisors. You are not responsible for solving their challenges. That's what they were elected for. And if we're going to do what our children will require, if they're going to live in a competitive society, we're not going to do it by cutting the budget because we're apprehensive about how it will be received by the Board of Supervisors. That is not, of course, to say anybody expects you to be foolish in the expenditure of those funds. You demonstrated again and again
that you are stewards of that money. And I appeal to you, when you go before the Board of Supervisors with the budget this year, that every member of the school board sit in the front row, and that the superintendent will know that she has the total support of the board to a person. And I urge you to ask the citizens of the county to come and support you. Several of you have been here when we have had in recent years board meetings, school board meetings, discussing a preliminary budget with the superintendent. And we have had representatives from the faculty present in numbers. The people who man the school buses, the maintenance shop, were there in numbers. And those people who represent the children as their parents need to be there. And you need to ask, without hesitation or embarrassment, that the citizenry who believe in a better public school system come to that hearing. Thanks very much.
I'm Barney O'Mara, and I think since gerrymandering, I'm in the Piedmont district. I voted in Sperryville, maybe. Anyway, it takes a lot of bravery to follow Bill Deedle, and I wish I'd stood up earlier after Brittany spoke. I was going to channel a man up the interstate in Washington and say, "You're hired." But thank you, Bill. Words of wisdom here. I was here, I think, in early September to talk about the First Step collaboration. And although that's not part of the budget, I wanted to say thank you and give you an interim report. We'll follow up with something more formal soon, but that program's going very well. Within a week or so after we got the agreement signed, we had 24 kids, 18 that are in the Head Start equivalent and 6 others. I want to give a shout out to Headwaters for stepping up and funding a portion of the excess beyond what the county is paying for. Thanks to Headwaters and their leadership on that. And thanks to Dr. Grimsley, our public-private partnership with the school system has gone on for the mixed delivery grant. And I see what we're talking about now with the school budget as tying into the mixed delivery grant. And what is happening in this county is an exciting time. There's a very recently formed foster care task force that many of you know about. It has shortly enabled classes to be held, and I understand that 20 of the 24 places in those classes have been filled within a couple of weeks. So so lots happening with our kids in Rappahannock, and a lot more is going to be happening soon. And I would say that I would paraphrase Bill Deedle's recommendation as looking in the bottom end of the microscope or the telescope and looking out and up at what is possible rather than down at the pennies. I agree with Bill that that's your responsibility, is to ask for what your vision is for what's needed rather than doing the supervisor's job. And I would agree with Larry Grove, if he's hearing that other districts are going to be giving 8% raises, then we might consider, in order to stay competitive rather than the idea of just barely treading water is not really attractive. I would say the old adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure means that spending on a social worker could save an enormous amount of money. At the rate of an ounce to a pound, that's a ratio of 16 to 1. I don't know that's what the adage intends, but it could be close to that. What will happen with the problems of trauma with suicide or drug abuse, those are huge problems. I think Dr. Grimsley said that that the numbers we have now are in crisis. Those two words are powerful. So thank you. I would urge you to support that position in the school budget. And since I won't be here, I'll be out of the country on March 12th. I'll urge and support your budget in advance. I don't think you could put it so high that I would object. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, that was powerful. Good job. All right. We're going to move on. Anyone else? Last chance? We're done. Moving on to action items. Is there a motion to approve the Madison agreement in its current state? We have a motion, Mr. Ubben. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Grove. Any discussion? If you leave too early, you'll miss a cake. It's more caution.
Please take some with you.
No dessert if you leave early.
It'll be breakfast for someone. There's a motion on the table. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And so ordered. Is there a motion to approve the calendar? Which one was it? Was it B?
Calendar B, so
B
this,
with the two
two
big
motions. One,
Too much. Right. The modification of the existing calendar.
yes, and then approval of calendar B.
So
So
the,
approval of calendar B first.
yeah, I already started. So is there a motion to approve calendar B as the selected calendar for the 2019-20 school year?
I so moved.
We have a motion, Ms. Bynum. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Ms. Meyer. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. So is there a motion to approve the changes to the 2018-19 calendar?
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Ubben. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Meyer. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. So ordered. Motion to approve the Narcan policy as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Grove, second Mr. Ubben. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. So ordered. New business. I was hoping that Ms. Bynum would have an opportunity to speak about her trip.
Yeah,
Can you do that now?
I can do that now.
Great.
Yeah, so I went to the Capitol Conference. I guess it was great. It was good to be there because it did make me figure out how all the different levels fit into what goes into a budget as a relatively new school board member. It was very interesting. I made a little report, but the thing that was the most salient, since it's getting late-ish, that I wanted to share was that the National School Board Association person spoke, pointing out that in 2020 there's going to be a census, and it's going to be done primarily online, which means that, especially caution to rural counties like ours, that we might be undercounted. That one reason for losing some federal funding, could be that we don't count everybody. So one thing that caught my interest was, if we think, once we're past this, towards how are we going to make sure that our dwindling numbers are at least counted accurately, especially things like Head Start funding are obviously are tied to the census. So that was kind of the biggest exclamation mark in my that I felt like it was worth going just to well, that was specifically one of the things she said. So it's just something to keep in mind. And one thing that you said, you could educate students about the census, thinking about as families come in. We've talked about possibly during student registration, we could have a computer there where people can fill out their forms, possibly census as well. But there is, that's not what I'm recommending. It's just sort of thinking creatively about how we get counted, because there's a lot of great internet access here and just.
Well, a lot of people won't do it.
A lot of people won't do it because they're just private
I
people.
mean-
A lot of people won't do it because they're worried about
They're
A lot
not
of people don't
the
have.
thinking of the
implications of doing it.
consequences.
Yeah, so it's something to start to get our heads around, and I'd love to try to be proactive about that. I don't even know how to be proactive about it, but it was an interesting point. And then I did get to meet, I met with Representative Garrett after like 6 people from Fauquier came out, including their superintendent and like most of their school board, and I think another.
Just say we need it more.
And so I went in and I had my talking points. He was sure that we were going to get that enrollment loss money back. And we did have a good rapport, and he is, Rappahannock is the only county that's fully within his district, and we spoke about, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I tried following up by email twice and didn't get anything back. Maybe I'll try calling his office just to ask about that, because he seemed like it was, but I know that it's all very much a soup-making process here, so I don't know. But that was, and then I did even meet Mr. Obenshain, which is more rare, and I spoke with his aide more about the Narcan policy, which his aide assured me that there were 3 different bills and 1 bill got passed, as you all know. But it was a useful thing, and I felt like it was a really productive way to spend a day and a half. Of my time at my low rate of
Your
$200
low rate
a
of pay,
month.
right?
So, but it was interesting, and I learned a lot, and I'm glad I went.
I appreciate you sharing that. So we're coming to the end of things, and I don't want to leave without giving people a chance to speak to this. So based upon what we just heard from the public, and knowing that tonight all we're doing is giving guidance to Dr. Grimsley, CFO, regarding the building out of the budget, is anything that we talked about tonight as far as that initial guidance, has that changed after public comment for where do we stand with that?
I still stand the same way.
I would really like
I
to.
mean,
I can tell you at this point, the only thing we're going to be doing is cutting things out from here forward.
yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
You're only hearing one half of the public. God bless them. Next month, you're gonna hear the other half that comes in.
I'm sure.
And they're gonna rip you a new one for why you have it based on we lose 25 students per year for the past 5 years in a row. We've had 70 in homeschool. Our numbers are coming down and coming down fast. How can we justify it?
Right. So
We're gonna, you have to.
I understand. So my
I
only
love
point is
that.
this, so if we were going to try to enter an agreement with Madison, for example, right? Or we were gonna try to have fund something, we need to have something in there to give the superintendent some backup to have that conversation. That's all. That's all I'm saying. And we're, like I said, the only thing that happens from here out is we start clipping pieces off that we can't afford, that we start out there, have we done our due diligence, just trying to have that conversation?
And I'm interested to know also how much Medicaid reimbursement really would take out of that. We get a very low amount back for what services we already provide, but that'd be a research point to find out, because I know some schools get a larger amount than others, and how many we have are Medicaid eligible versus don't, and plus our Title IV grant covering NCG services as well. So we have other pieces to weigh in as well, so.
Who's gonna file and track and submit, manage all that half of it too?
We'll end up being the custodian of that. You're
Somebody's
right.
gonna be on top of that, and it's gonna take away from that person's time to do that.
Well,
or
we
somebody
already
else is
have
gonna
that
jump on
piece
it.
in place.
Yeah,
We have that.
What if we left so much money into we can always take it away. We can always take it back. If you left it in, but left it in with the intent of going to Madison and seeing how much they could bring
Right.
to the table.
So all I'm saying
how much
is,
they would put up.
right now, we've got this 80K plan. Let's put 40K and say we're gonna try to take a forward step in this direction in some type of partial ownership of a position, and it's there for discussion between now and the time where we start pruning things.
Would they meet us
And see
halfway
what
for a
creative ways,
part-time?
sir?
Would they meet us halfway for a part-time?
Right,
Like
right.
Paige does.
Right, but we can't.
That can do their home teacher studies and can help us
Right,
do.
right, and all I'm saying is we can't have that conversation.
We can.
Dr.
Can't-
Grimsley
if you
can't
don't put
have
it
that
in, you
conversation.
can't talk about it.
Right, that's all I'm saying. So let's, if Dr. Grimsley's looking for some initial guidance.
I mean, I find it very convincing that prevention piece and the personal story that Ms. Dwyer shared, I feel like we are losing a lot of kids to homeschool because they feel like they can't take it. I mean, there's different reasons people leave school, we don't know. I'm not privy to those reasons, but people talk a lot about stress at school and about anxiety.
Special
and-
education.
Yeah, and so just thinking, I mean, perhaps some of those 70 homeschool students might feel more, not like tomorrow, but maybe people might be less, I mean, that number is.
Quarter of them, yeah, I mean, you get some
I mean,
back, but it just
We
depends.
we can't know unless we do something different.
I don't wanna give any kind of Medicaid information, have that put out there, be on top of it. It can't hurt to try. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna be a benefit with the drug interaction, this, that, and the other. I would also like to see what the link is gonna do. Can we piggyback on that and make it more than one day a week? It's already in county and in home, it's already coming. Can we increase that somehow?
I think we have to give some room. So all I'm going to say is the consensus of the board at this point that we could put 40K against an MSW type position for budget planning purposes and help us find some creative ways.
And what is a realistic salary for that position?
Well,
She says 80,000.
No, not for
Well,
salary,
not for
that's
salary.
everything
The benefits.
together.
so
That's
For-
salary.
for-
What do we count, between
Clinician, is
68
it
and 75?
I'm betting it's more than that.
But you start teaching.
Probably.
I mean,
yeah,
That's
but
Probably
clinical
to start
license.
We couldn't get a regular social worker. to
we
bite.
couldn't, we tried.
52.
We couldn't get them to bite.
Well, I
And
understand
now you
that.
want a certified clinician. I'm just saying, what's a real
Well, they told us
salary
what
that's
it
gonna bring them in?
it's on
That's
the
what-
administrative scale.
Yeah, it's
So I tell you, it's 80, whatever.
It's more than
6
80. Yeah,
Bottom line.
yeah, you're
Right.
talking more than 80.
So let's start out with a conversation that says, hey,
I
we're
like
gonna partner with somebody,
Buddy.
here's 40K on the table for you to start doing some talking
And
with
what are-
somebody about some alternatives.
what are the success rates? What are they, what have they done? And Folk here has 9 of them. What have they done? I mean, have they changed any of the statistics? Or what is the result? Paige has 1 part-time.
There's
So
one county was saying.
we're building
Nice.
something on, we have
Gotcha.
absolutely no.
Paige has a much worse drug epidemic.
And how, if they're they come to school at 8 o'clock, what do they do between 8 and 3? That's what I'd like.
About Porter County too.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, that's why a shared asset, I think, is a good.
It's cheaper to live.
Yeah, Madison's a likely
Starting point.
partner because they
They're
have
about
none
5.
either.
They have none, and I think what's gonna come down the pike is you're gonna be forced to have one anyway.
And we might be able to write a grant for something to be able to prove concept and partner with another, so that's another avenue we could look
All right,
into.
good. So there's your consensus, Dr. Griffin.
Well,
Okay?
Nothing against having a social
The big
worker,
one.
I just don't wanna
All right,
spend half.
thanks. So we're gonna put some level of effort against it and try to negotiate. Thanks. The next are we okay?
I think that's one more thing. As a point, I think we have to do what we feel is right regardless of what the dollar amount is. I really do believe that. And if it's right that we partner and have a 0.5, that's because of the size of our population, so be it. If it's a 0.5 with social services, so be it. I think that's the base that we have to go for.
They have it, you just want to be able to justify it.
I understand. Right.
Yeah.
All right, next order schedule,
I got one more
regularly,
thing.
oh, you got another thing?
Yeah, one more, new.
All right, new business.
Leave it to me. No, I was
Cutting into the cake
perusing.
time, Larry.
Huh?
Cutting into
Cake time, I know, but this is important,
All right.
because they don't brag about stuff, over here, these people, they don't brag very much. But I was perusing the agenda for the February 18th professional development schedule.
Ah.
Have you seen that?
Just came out
It's
today, right?
exceptional. It's really, really, really good. You take a look. And it has to do with things that are important for kids and for teachers.
First aid, AED, hands-on CPR, mental health, first aid. That's probably what Brittany was talking about.
Mhm.
Red Flags Book Club author presentation, STEAM training, intro to peer mentoring. That's just the morning. In the afternoon, how to address drug abuse with students, healthy meals in minutes.
You had that on.
Restorative justice class meetings, coaching small group sessions, content area, department, grade level, vertical design, sure, yeah, there's people that know it, I just didn't know what it was. Active student participation through the use of educational games I can take, so a lot of good opportunities there. Tight schedule.
It's tight. but
And
it's-
they gonna get their points through these things. And it's gonna snow.
But it's not gonna snow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good job putting that together.
Is it really?
So, a lot of good opportunities.
And one of our teacher leaders is helping with this and really working with the staff to find areas of need with Mrs. Johnson. So teacher leader Karen Sanborn has stepped up to the role to help coordinate our professional development and has been a huge
Well,
asset.
this is a list of some really exceptional things that teachers need, and I just thought, since you don't brag about it, I will.
And then this STEAM training shows there's a STEAM lab, they're starting up
Yes.
this spring, right at the elementary school. Very awesome.
All right, our next meeting is March the 12th at 6:30 PM in the auditorium. And at this time, we're gonna move into closed session. We'll take a recess after this motion, and then we'll be coming out of closed session, I would say, in 30 minutes, at which time we'll have motions related to things in closed session and adjourn. So is there a motion?
I move the board convene into closed session for the following purpose: to discuss and consider the appointment of staff members for coaching positions, a classified position, and discussions of superintendent's evaluation and goals pursuant to code section 2.23711A1.
We have a motion from Larry Grove. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Rubin. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're going to recess. And if you want some cake, come and get some cake.
I'm gonna get some.